The researcher speaking here is Harry Moncreiff from the University of Edinburgh. Harry, go ahead. And please try to keep to your 15 minutes. I'm trying not to interrupt people because we're videoing this, but I will if I have to.
Yeah, I could probably try it, get it a bit. See, I can actually, sorry, just need to share the screen. It's not. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so you can all see the screen now and hear me fine. Yeah, so, well, good morning, well, good morning in the UK where I am, good afternoon in other parts. So apologies for not being able to be here in person. I would have liked to, but I've got a 1-year-old child and wasn't able to get away from childcare responsibilities for the week. Now, my research examines the oil and gas industry engagement and low carbon innovation systems in the North Sea region. So specifically, I look at how the oil and gas industry in the UK, Norway and the Netherlands is responding to the energy transition and to various low carbon technologies in these three regions, and comparing and contrasting the various responses. However, my presentation isn't going to cover any sort of specific research results or research papers. Instead, I'll focus on the theme of this session and try to come up with some sort of interesting or stimulate some debate or some discussions around some potential conflicting opinions, or some of the sort of discussions that are going on at the moment, which are yet to be resolved. I can maybe take some of these into the plenary session. So in the session, I will focus on the two industries, offshore oil and gas industry and the offshore wind industry. And so the theme of the session was complementarities and conflicts. Now, I'm not going to talk about the potential complementarities between the two industries because I believe they are pretty well understood and well documented. There's many reports and publications out there that have looked into the synergies between the two industries. And this can be in terms of reusing and repurposing oil and gas assets and infrastructure, and also the transfer of skills and knowledge between the two industries. So I don't feel that would really add anything new to this discussion. However, what's perhaps received less attention is some of the potential, conflicting visions and divergences between the two industries, certain aspects of the North Sea energy system. And so that's what I've kind of focused on in this presentation. And I've chosen three potential conflicts or disagreements between the industry. These have been selected from my wider PhD thesis, which involved 45 interviews with industry experts in the three regions. These included policymakers, government regulators, oil and gas companies, renewable energy companies, research organizations, technology developers, etc. So I basically gone into this interview data sets and sort of looked at three of the sort of tried to come up with some of the currently the conflicts that are happening, or the disagreements that are happening kind of between these two industries that are maybe kind of relevant for this theme, that have kind of emerged, which perhaps aren't kind of promoted as much in the public at the moment. So the first sort of theme regards the concept of system integration and market size. So the integration of offshore energy systems, including oil and gas, renewables, hydrogen and carbon capture and storage, is seen as a vital strategy to meet many of the North Sea region's climate targets. However, there remain certain sticking points. The first potential issue regards the scale of the power demand for oil and gas platforms as an investment opportunity for the offshore wind industry. The North Sea offshore wind industry has grown considerably over the last 10 years, and as a result, many pockets of the energy transition are simply not big enough for the wind industry to see as a suitable investment for them. For example, in the UK, it's been estimated that the power demand for the whole UK continental shelf is about 2.3 gigawatts, which is approximately just 3 wind farms. While the oil and gas industry has been promoting the potential of the wind industry to supply such power, the wind industry currently lacks a sort of commercial approach to the investments on this scale. One of the issues currently that's happening is that the pricing remains a key sticking point between the industries. The oil and gas industry have calculated that, in the UK, if the wind industry can bid in at a contract for difference, it's around £40 a megawatt hour. They should be able to supply their platforms for a similar price. Now, while this is significantly less than the cost of the power of the platforms, the costs that the oil and gas companies currently pay for the power generation, they are committed to pursuing kind of a similar price around 40 to 50, because they know that if the offshore wind companies do not connect to the grid, they pay less grid charges, and the grid charges or transmission user system charges in the north of Scotland, where a lot of the offshore wind is currently the highest in the UK, and these wind companies are direct competition of those in the east coast of England, which currently do not pay zero transmission costs. So as a result, by moving the grid transmission costs, the oil and gas industry know that they could get around 50 megawatts hour, £50 a megawatt hour. However, the offshore wind industry has also done their own sums, and they know that it's that they are currently paying significantly more. That the oil and gas industry are paying significantly more for their power generation. So while they recognise that there is the wind industry recognise there is a demand for power from the oil and gas industry, the difference over pricing and the scalability result in a current gap between the two industries, which is yet to be resolved. As a result, currently some of the larger companies have little interest, and they need to see significant demand if they are to invest. And if these issues aren't resolved, it is likely, many in the sector predict that the two industries might go their separate ways, and we might not see the systems integration to the extent that is currently kind of being talked about and is mentioned in many of the visions and reports. And this could result in, for example, the oil and gas industry becoming their own suppliers of offshore wind, which is what we see happening with Equinor. And another potential solution that is being proposed as a way to kind of create this demand is to aggregate the fields, the oil and gas fields, in order to create this scale. So by aggregating many small fields together and strategically putting a wind farm there, you could perhaps get the scale that's required for an investment. However, there's two as potential issues which are kind of going to the next point. And that's another point that's emerged, is the potential reluctance of the wind industry to facilitate oil and gas extraction. Now, the use of offshore wind to power the oil and gas platforms is a concept that has been increasingly promoted by the oil and gas industry as a way to reduce its carbon emissions. However, what is not highlighted as much as the increased hydrocarbon extraction from using offshore wind to power these platforms. So electrification from wind farms can increase hydrogen production and revenues in three main ways. The first is by replacing the gas turbine by an electrical drive. The fuel gas that would have otherwise been used to facilitate the production process can now be sold. This increase in the total revenues of gas and taxes from electrified platforms. The increased revenues from the sale of the fuel gas are expected to outweigh the price that needs to be paid for the electricity to power the drive. Secondly, the OPEX, or operational expenditure reductions due to electrification, means that the hydrogen production can carry on from external for an extended period of time. This increased economic lifetime of the platforms could possibly lead to a higher volume that can be recovered from the fields, which will also increase total production and revenues for the North Sea countries. And then finally, because of electrification will lead to reduced carbon dioxide certificates that need to be purchased. And this will again have an overall cost reduction effect on the OPEX of the platform. Now, as a result, the oil and gas industry in the North Sea has been increasingly looking into the potential of bundling these marginal fields, also called small pools, as an opportunity to develop previously uneconomical fields by conventional methodology. Sorry about this. However, this can pose a dilemma for the wind industry, as it could increase their carbon footprint through the facilitation of greater hydrocarbon extraction. the outcome of such, and this obviously has ramifications both from the potential societal pressure for the offshore wind companies, but also the financial pressure from green investment markets and European utilities with regards to kind of shareholder objections. Now, the outcome of such potential concerns still remains to be seen, but obviously it could have a wider impact for future energy system integrations in the North Sea. So it kind of goes on to this kind of final question is, and I think this is a question that's not really being asked at the moment, but I think it will be sort of, be increasingly asked, is that, does the increased hydrocarbon extraction from electrification outweigh potential carbon reductions from using renewable power? I think this would be a question that many will be asking themselves over the coming years. And so the third one, that is a concept that is being talked a lot about, especially in the UK and in the Netherlands, is the potential of blue hydrogen as a transition fuel. Now, the role of blue hydrogen as a transition fuel is, just 2 seconds, just away that. The role of blue hydrogen as a transition fuel for green hydrogen is an approach that many in the oil and gas industry have been promoting. Incumbent oil and gas companies in the North Sea are making a case due in part to the potential reuse and repurposing of invested assets. However, the offshore wind industry, which has little or no investments with the potential reuse, is a bit less supporting of this this narrative. While the oil and gas industry argue that green hydrogen production is currently not to scale, the offshore wind industry also argue that neither is blue hydrogen due to the requirement for CCS, for which there is none currently at scale that is linked to the production of blue hydrogen. As a result, blue hydrogen also requires significant investment. So the wind industry are questioning, why is that investment not being made directly into green hydrogen? For example, in September 2020, the Offshore Wind Industry Council released a report which claimed that similar investment levels in electrolyzers could result, and other technologies could result in by 2030, green hydrogen would be on par with blue hydrogen. And the wind industry are, begin to highlight the significant advances that are made in cost reductions of offshore production from 160 pounds per megawatt hour to 40 megawatts per hour just in about 6 years. And saying, we could also start to see some of these cost reductions in green hydrogen. Obviously, the cost of electricity as well is an important factor. So the industry is arguing that should we follow a path that led to rapid cost reductions, we can also see similar results in green hydrogen. And of course, these issues need to be resolved, as such uncertainty will impact investment for both blue and green hydrogen. And such uncertainty will lead to a detrimental effect of both technologies. If you're looking at sort of blue hydrogen CCS, that certainly in the UK aren't going to be operational to 2023, 2024. If you're then looking at 2030 in terms of a transition, you're not going to see the returns of the investment. So there's still, while there are a lot of publications and talking about these shared visions on the role of blue hydrogen, I think there's still a lot that needs to be resolved between this and also between some of the other points that I mentioned that will all relate to and have future ramifications over sort of the systems integration in the offshore North Sea region. And so with that, I will just end it. So there's also a number of research papers which I hope will be published on the ENSYSTRA website and database if you want to kind of look more into some of this research. And with that, I'll hand over. Stop sharing.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We did have a final reaction planned by Sjur Bratland from Norwegian Energy Partners. I don't see. He is here. So thank you very much for joining us, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much. We have had the pleasure of having Harry with us for a small year and have a lot of dialogues around these issues. My background is actually more than 20 years within the entire energy space. That means that I've been working in oil and gas, hydrogen, offshore wind, onshore wind, wave power. So I've seen a lot of these dilemmas that we have. And of course, my main task now is to show how the possibilities going forward for the entire supply industry within the energy space. That means that the traditional oil and gas suppliers, we use the terms, we will not deny anyone to be Kodak. And for those who remember Kodak that didn't recognize the new technology coming, they went bankrupt. But if they want to be a Kodak player in going forward, because they want to harvest from the technology so far, but we always need to show them the opportunity and the possibilities. That is our main task. And then the suppliers themselves have to decide where to go or not to go. First of all, I think I will warn about making a lot of conflicts. If you have a task, you should focus on that. That means that you should focus on your task and not disregard anyone else or talk anything bad about anyone else. We're talking about this discussion between green and blue hydrogen. If you are working with green hydrogen, I would focus on that and see to the cost being reduced, and then hopefully you can outbeat the blue hydrogen going forward. But today, we need the blue hydrogen to create a market so the green hydrogen can take their relevant place and the deserved place. I think that the issue that we actually have in front of us regarding the environmental side is so immense and so huge and need all the positive elements that we can use. And that's why I will be very concerned about making these conflicts larger than they are. Then it's up to the policymakers to be honest about their goals and the means they're going to use, and give the industry a chance to transform if that is what's going on. I've been working with a politician for so many years, and a lot of times they have said things which not have been executed or done. And that means that we as an industry have jumped into some markets, areas where the policymakers then are retracting from afterwards when they see the consequence of what they are doing. So believing in silver bullets or picking winners in the long term, that is actually a very tricky task to do. So the policymakers need to make support the market. CO2 regime is a very good way to tell someone that you will have these costs and these costs will increase. How do you prepare yourself for that? But of course, to single out Europe as a single market, then meeting the competition from Asia and other places, that's of course a big consequence of having a CO2 market in Norway. Regarding your 3 points you made, I think this market size, I think you will have a lot of players that would be interested in going into smaller projects, maybe because they don't have the long-term experience. Maybe they want to prove their ability to make projects. But of course, the oil and gas industry need them to pay the relevant price. So it's attractive for their players to go into there with their projects. Hywind Tampen is a very good example where they want to prove the concept in a larger scale. That's a scale of project for floating industry, which is of interest to the oil and gas industry and also to the supply industry. So I think you should be able to find commercial terms that will make it interested for a lot of players to go in there. Reluctance of the offshore wind industry to facilitate hydrocarbon extraction. I think we have to recognize that in the short term, maybe also in the long term, we still will have a lot of oil and gas going forward. And then the question is, what do you do with that? Do you deny the existing, or do you try to reduce the CO2 footprint in that task? So I think you should see that as you can decide whatever term you would like to use, but I think you have to see that the oil and gas industry will continue for some years, and then the future will tell when this will going to stop. And back again to this blue and green hydrogen, I don't think you should see that as a threat to your, if you are working with green, but you should see it as a possibility to build up a market until the cost of green hydrogen has reached the level of blue hydrogen. And of course, the cost will also change due to the CO2 cost that will be put on the blue hydrogen going forward, and also maybe requirement for CCUS. And then you will find a different cost level going forward. But I think to increase the market and build out the market is very important also for the green hydrogen. So I will see it's no opposition between green and blue, but the timing is maybe different, and your belief on going forward, that's what you need to focus on, and we'll see. I think there was some few comments from me, and a gratulation to you, Harry, for this task. And I think it's very important that we see how we can show the possibilities going forward for the supply chain within the oil and gas, which I think is extremely important for the offshore wind also going forward, because the lack of competence, the lack of supply chain will maybe be one of the big challenges going forward. Thank you.